Only a little late. Just a little late. Oh, Lord. Traffic in the Seattle area sucks. We just put it out that way. It's Tuesday through Thursday, especially. It's abysmal. Oh, man. I hope you're all doing well. As you can tell, I'm going to probably be adjusting a few things throughout this because, I got upstairs as fast as possible. It was already like 6:01, just speed set everything up. So I hope audio and video looks okay because I didn't get time to test it. Oh boy. Yeah. So yeah. Welcome, everybody. Maybe good. Thank you, Zach. Thank you. So I'll get into a topic because this one, pretty short and sweet, I think. So last weekend, right? Because my club meets the second Saturday every month now. It used to be Tuesdays until I went on a warpath and recruited Master Breeder Dean to help me, and we got it changed to Saturdays. And then I almost promptly missed a bunch of meetings because I was too busy for my own good. However, so we had our meeting. Gary Lange was in town. He did a talk Friday night about his most recent expedition, which was one of his least successful trips. Which, and Gary's really good at making things like fun and funny, especially if you're a fish nerd, and especially if you love rainbow fish, right? Because we rainbow fish people, we tend to be like the weird kids of the group when it comes to like the bigger groups of fish, like live bear folks. There's a lot more probably live bear people than there are rainbow people. Cichlids are probably the biggest group, and they love to like bully everybody else in a like loving older brother kind of way. So of course we rainbow fish people, when we encounter cichlid people, we like to give them some slack back. Gary is kind of notorious for doing that. But yeah, that is a trident on my cap. This would be a Mariners hat. This actually, I'll take it off for a second. It's over here on this side. One of my really good friends got this for me. It's from the All-Star game in 2023. And he went to the All-Star game, and he just thought it looked really, really cool. Knew that I loved hats and baseball and Seattle sports in general. So he got me this one and another one that is like really just decked. It's more generic, and it's really decked out in All-Star game stuff. That one I don't wear. This is the one I like to wear because I just think it looks really awesome. And the Mariners are playing well, which is rare, so I'm just preparing myself deep down for disappointment and regret, because that's what the Mariners do best. It's disappoint the fans. But I don't know, they're looking great. But yeah, trying for Gary in my club, hopefully in November. Alishon, like, anytime you can get Gary, it's awesome. The other meeting that's coming up for my club that I'm really excited for is we're supposed to have Greg Sage it's either January or February, one of the two. And I really like Greg Sage as a person, and he is a phenomenal fish breeder, so I'm just looking forward to his talks. But yeah, Gary's been to our club 6 times now, which is a lot if you think about it, but we love Gary quite a lot, so we bring him up whenever we can. Lawrence Kent in June, that's going to be fantastic. But your Hawks beat up on Aaron's crew. No, man, I feel like early on they were doing pretty well defensively. The Steelers, that is. Like, they had a couple of picks. One was a bad throw by Darnold into just like bad coverage. The other one was a really good defensive lineman play, tipping the ball, all that kind of stuff. Totally off topic. You guys already got me off topic. What else is new, right? But, I feel like the Steelers played pretty well. Rodgers is throwing pretty well in general. They just weren't quite clicking the way they did in week 1. They'll get that fixed. Like, I don't know. They're a good team. They have a great defense. Their special teams need some work. But they also have Chris Boswell, who's one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It made me feel better after week 1. High school cliques, if they were fish, oh man, Rainbow fish nerds would probably be the drama kids. We'd probably be like the drama nerds. Cichlids are definitely the jocks. Uh, Live bears are probably the band geeks. You know, Tetra people, you kind of mesh in with the cichlids, but not quite. So maybe you're like the cheerleaders, because you're always Tetras are always kind of relegated to being like the supporting characters. You know what I'm saying? Like it's always like, oh yeah, I got my schools of Tetras, and then here's my centerpiece fish. Instead of like, I've got Tetras, that's my centerpiece fish. Unless you have like 4 bajillion Tetras in one tank, and then it's way different. Killy people would be the band geeks. No, man, I think Killy people are like the people who are playing D&D. They're the super nerdy kids, because killifish geeks. You gotta think about this, right? Like the true deep killifish people are the ones that have like a closet full of a bunch of shoebox-sized plastic containers, each labeled with a different species, right? That's their jam. Tetras are the FFA kids. So for those who come from more urban areas like I am, those would be the future farmers of America, right? You might not have that, but I would argue that the FFA kids are not that. I actually think that the FFA kids are your shrimp keepers, because they're out there like carefully and meticulously taking care of plants, or like autosynclists and some of the other like maintenance crew, but not plecos. I agree that pleco keepers are probably like the pot smokers under the bleachers. They're down for munchies anytime. They're just kind of off on their lonesome. They kind of hide away from everybody, but they got their own special green stuff that they like to go for. No, plecos are definitely not the goth kids. Absolutely not. They're not the goth kids at all. No way. No way. Goths are angelfish. They're a little feisty, but they look kind of cool, right? You're not really sure whether they're going to be nice to the fish in your tank, or whether they're going to like go and try and murder fest everything. They always like kind of flaring out in a little bit of way, but not in a way that's being overly aggressive. You're just kind of like, I'm not, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to do with you. All right, I don't know. I don't know. Uh, the betas are antisocial. I don't know. Betas might be like the hyper nerds, because they got like that. They got a couple things that they get really deep on. They're like math kids, kind of quiet, kind of chill, till they see another one of their own type, and then they kind of like flex on each other a little bit, try to stress that super genius nerd power, or the computer kids. You know what I'm talking about? I was like half of these all together, because I was a D&D nerd. I was I was a computer nerd. I was like really good at math. I used to do debate in middle school, but I didn't do drama or music, and I was never a jock. It's just that kind of stuff. Anyway, God Lord, that's something else right there. Gosh, the only customers who keep the really bizarre oddball fish. I actually don't think the bizarre oddballs are your goths, but maybe that's just because I grew up in kind of like what I would argue is the peak era of goth kids at school, as far as the popularity of like the goth look. And yeah, squirrel. On topic, let's get back to that. So, Gary's in town. We're going to have Rainbow Fish talks. The Saturday talk, the one that most of the club is coming to, is his kind of most common basic talk, which is everything you need to know about rainbows, and we're afraid to ask. And I think it's a good talk, and I actually learned something out of it. But before we get into that important lesson, I want to talk about a couple of things that occurred. So a bunch of people kind of came out of the woodwork, including our very own local celebrity, right? Corey was there from Aquarium Co-op. And it was kind of nice to see Corey. And the funniest thing is, Corey came through the door. We kind of nodded and smiled at each other, like just casual greeting. Corey and I basically did not talk to each other the entire time, which I think is hilarious because very frequently there were some other people who were there who were newer members of the club that seeing Corey in person, they really want to talk to him, ask him questions. However, like during the auction, right? During the auction, Corey and I kept like looking at each other and doing this, like, because there were a lot of things going for ridiculously cheap prices. And I'll give you an example, because Corey bought a lot of fish. I was actually really surprised. And he put up a picture where it's like he had 7 hatching trays full of rainbow fish, and he had bought other fish beyond that, which I thought was kind of crazy. But there was a bag, I think it was like 7 star sapphire African cichlids, right? And if you're familiar with those, like, way back in the day, they used to be super expensive. Nowadays, you can get them through Imperial Tropicals. I think they're like $15 a fish or whatever. But they're still a very, very popular African cichlid. This bag of 7 fish went for $5. It was less than $1 a fish. And like no one else bid on it. And I remember, and Corey's just like, puts this thing up. The auctioneer's like looking around. No one else is remotely interested. And Corey looks over at me, and I look over at him at the same time. We're both like, just like, what the the price is so ridiculously low. He got several of like really good rainbow fish egg kits for like $10 and $15, which normally the rainbow fish egg kits go for quite a lot in our club. And the 3 biggest rainbow fish people in our entire club were all there. So me, Hoon Aquatics, and then Jason Liang, who he's let me get this down here. I still have these down here. He's the guy, if you've ever seen him, he makes these like really cool rainbow fish magnets. Right? And they're all handmade. Like if I flip this over, it's a little dusty. It's been sitting for a bit, but like they're all hand done with clay, and he makes a little magnet, he hand paints everything. And he used to take these into the fish store he used to work at, and he basically sold them to the fish store super cheap, and then they would resell them for a reasonable price. I think they were like $7 or $8 a magnet, something like that. Nothing too scary considering they're handcrafted, hand-painted, everything, right? So you got the 3 biggest rainbow fish nerds there. I bid on exactly this many items. That's not true. I bid on like 2 things just because their price was so low that I was like, okay, I'll do that. And an example would be, there is a member of our club who has Gary Lange rainbows. And I have a colony of Gary Lange. And he's basically getting out of the Gary Lange's because he's kept them for a while. And he wanted to free up a tank for a different rainbow fish. So he's been slowly bringing them to meetings. And he had 3 bags of 7 fish apiece. And the first 2 bags came up at $7 a bag. And I was just like, I'll add to my colony for $1 a fish on a pretty hard to find rainbow in the grand scheme of things, right? And eventually they went up to like $15. And at that point, I'm just letting people who don't have the fish or who are excited get them. Because I have my group, and I'm okay with that, right? And I know where to get more if I ever need them. So, in the end, I walked home with 0 things. And there were several times where, like, an egg kit would come up, and it'd be a relatively rare rainbow, like, Kalitawa, or the Myrisai, or there's a few other ones. And, like, half the room that knew better would just go, like, almost in unison and turn and look at me. Not the other 2 rainbow fish nerds in the room, me. And each time I'm like... And even a couple times Gary looks over at me like, the hell's wrong with you? Well, I told him later, like, because of work and things like that, my fish room is basically in stasis mode, and I'm not in a place where I can raise rainbows from eggs. So I'm not going to get them. And the rainbow I cared the most about, which is a relatively new species... Let's see if I can find it. Melitania. Oh, I don't think I'm going to find it. No, it's too new. There's not even really out there. It's like Melanitania Tool CI or something along those lines. It might be Tulasi. Trying to remember exactly what it was. I'd have to go digging into our club's information on on the the auction, but Hoon Aquatics got those, so I know he'll have them, and I will be significantly happier because I know eventually I can get them from him when I have tank space. And they're just beautiful, bright yellow rainbow. They look a lot like the Chilatherina Upper Tor River, but are much more. Oh, maybe that's why. I think it might be a Chilatherina, not a Melanitania. Maybe that's why I'm being a dope. No, it's only bringing up the Tarutatu River right now. I'll get you the exact name. I know who has it. But anyway, it's this really awesome yellow rainbow. I've been kind of looking for a good yellow rainbow because it's become really hard to find the Frederick eyes regularly, which is actually the yellowish rainbow I want the most. Um, yeah. So basically, a bunch of rainbows came up. I bid on basically none of them. Corey took like 7 species home. Hoon Aquatics took, I think, 2 total home. And then Jason Liang, who's also a big like rainbow nerd, who drove up from San Diego. He's temporarily living down there in California. So he didn't drive up. He flew up and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, he came into town just to pick up rainbows from Gary and go home. And he's trying to move back up this way because he used to be out here. So one of those things. But let me get to the actual lesson. And I think this is a cool thing that a lot of people might not know. And Gary recently learned it. And had I known it, I would have included it in our kind of recent video about the Congo Tetra eggs. So there's a couple of ways in which your fish eggs can basically get the outside membrane so hard that you can't the fry can't break free, right? Most commonly, this is a fish species in too hard of water and it calcifies the outside. However, there's another occurrence where this happens, and that's anytime you use dechlorinator. So if you're putting in chlorinated water or chloramined water and you're not treating it ahead of time and aerating it and all those things, but you're treating it when it's going into the tank, dechlorinator can actually cause a hardening of the membrane of the outer portion of a fish egg that prevents the fish from being able to crack through and hatch. So they effectively can't ever hatch and thus die in the egg, and often will think they're like fungus or maybe they weren't fertile or things like that. It's a different problem. Here's an interesting lesson though. Microworms, specifically microworms, have a really interesting interaction with calcified eggshells. In that if you take a small amount of microworms, and they can't really float around like vinegar eels, but if you have them in the bottom of a tray and you put a small amount of microworms in a tray with your fish before they hatch, and you got to do this like if you really know the timing within a day or two of when they're going to hatch, right? Those microworms will actually eat the outer calcification that occurs on the egg, effectively breaking that harder structure away so that the fish can hatch, and then the baby fish can hatch and immediately eat the microworms. The microworms should not, keyword should, do physical damage to the egg that would damage the fry, but they will basically eat the substance that is causing the calcification around the outside of the egg if you do it in a short enough time window. I did not know this at all. I also didn't know about dechlor with rainbow eggs is most common with this, but a few other types of species hardening eggshells. Where they first encountered this was with, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like a killifish. So super, super interesting stuff, right? And it's one of those things where like, I remember I was looking at the 2 talks Gary was doing, and I'm like, dude, the Friday talk's the one I want to go to. That's his newest expedition. And even though I know, like on the back end, that it didn't go super well, I still love listening to Gary talk about his expeditions. I've listened to him do the like most amazing rainbow fish one, which is when he went and found like the Kalitawa and the Myrisai, right? I've heard that talk 3 times, and every time I love it. Any of his expedition talks, I will listen to them multiple times. And 3 times in person. I want to be very clear about that. I've heard it 3 times in person. And then I've subsequently watched it as well in a replay through our club, because our club records things that are only available to members, and you can watch the replays of any given talk for like, it's like almost 20 years at this point, because our filmographer has been slowly uploading old ones so that they're there. Does he get video of rainbows in the wild? He doesn't necessarily get videos. He definitely has lots of pictures of when they've caught them. Sometimes he will have videos when they've got them in the seine net. It just depends on whether or not he's actually operating the net, or whether he's outside and not one of the people operating the net. Depends on how big his group is that goes collecting, things like that, and a lot of other conditions as to whether or not he's got the ability to video things versus just take quick pictures. Because up there, right, it's really hard to recharge cell phones and things like that, especially on some of the longer trips. So if they're hitting multiple locations, he might only take pictures to make sure that he can get pictures at each location, as opposed to taking video because of the amount of drain on a battery, things like that. But he does try to get a number of videos mixed in with pictures for each of his different trips, which is pretty cool, honestly. It's part of what makes his presentation so fun. And then the Saturday one, right? The Saturday one is the one that's like the beginner talk, and I'm sitting there going like, that's going to be the big auction. I'm going to go, but I'm probably not going to be that in tune with it, right? Because it's going to be all the basic stuff, and I know most of this, and the big thing is going to be when Gary starts intersplicing the pictures of rainbows, and I'm going to love that because he takes phenomenal photos. And then there's that little knowledge drop about the eggs that I didn't know that came from killifish people to the rainbow world. And it's like, anytime, and it's one of those things that is, I've talked about this many times, but I'll re-say it now for all you wonderful folks. Then we can get into Q&A and do all that wonderful stuff. Anytime you are with, whether it's like a really senior member of your club, or that local like breeding legend of fish, that local like weird crazy person that knows everything under the sun about XY, whatever the heck that may be, right? Maybe it's like, for me as an example, my friend Alyssa, who's probably listening and working in her fish room, anytime I have pleco questions, I ask her. She's like the pleco queen of the area. She will know. And if she doesn't know, she knows someone who does know and can get that, right? It's like one of those things where she's in the pleco sphere. It's kind of like how I'm a psycho about rainbows. Even though I'm definitely not the most knowledgeable rainbow person in the Seattle area, that is definitely Hoon Aquatics or Jason Liang when he comes back up to Seattle. Those guys know way more on like collection points and XYZ than I do. I'm just the most vocal. I'm the loudmouth of the rainbow world in Seattle. But it's one of those things where anytime you get an opportunity to sit and casually talk with those people, just listen. Because you never know what little like nugget of gold that person will say so passively that will just instantly level up your fish knowledge with something that you would never think to ask about, right? And I've had 5 or 6 of these moments with Master Breeder Dean, who will be speaking in Raleigh, North Carolina, to the Raleigh Aquarium Society Thursday, October 2nd. So if you're in the area and you can make it to Raleigh on a Thursday, go see Master Breeder Dean, because his talks are wonderful and they're packed full of information. I got you, Paul. Coffee shot. Yeah, Gary is from St. Louis, but last weekend he was in Seattle speaking to my club. and touring a number of stores and some other stuff. So Friday he had a talk Friday night. Then he had his main talk Saturday, which is the main club meeting. We do it it's the second Saturday of every month, with some exceptions because there's like a little summer break, and there's 1 month where we do an auction instead of a club meeting. But there's always a club event, basically put. I gotta move to Seattle. I mean, I would not move to Seattle if you can't handle traffic and don't like ridiculously high cost of living, because the cost of living out here is a nightmare. But it's similar to like California, New York, etc., where like as a high cost of living area, you kind of have to grin and bear it. But if you're in the right industry, you're probably okay. It's one of those things. Hardly an LFS where I live, Laura. I feel bad for that. Your car can get broken into. This is true. My advice on that is have nothing in your car. Keep nothing in your car. Make it obvious and visible. Like one of the best pieces of advice I got from a friend at one point who lived like in a kind of high car theft area in Seattle was drive a manual, leave nothing in your car, and leave all of your doors unlocked. Because they'll check, and if it's locked, that's when they look at breaking windows and doing crap like that. But if it's unlocked, they'll open it, they'll get in your car, they'll look around, realize there's nothing worth stealing, and take off. Because almost none of the people who rob cars nowadays can drive a manual. So you don't have to worry about them driving your car away. Tesla needs to create a manual. Well, okay, in the case of Tesla, there's a pin that you can have that you have to enter a pin before you can drive. Just put that on. Now they got to play the guessing game and figure out your pin, as long as it's not something super obvious. Like, just don't do like the space balls and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll be fine. Easy peasy, right? Tech is wonderful for certain reasons, and terrible for others. Don't ever have to repair a Tesla. Ask me how I know. Oh man, but yeah, I'm near Salt Lake City, and all the LFSs are geared towards saltwater. Any freshwater are things you can get at Petco. That's unfortunate. You would think there would be at least a decent freshwater place there, but I guess like by the sheer nature of the fact that you're in Salt Lake, where your water is all like extremely hard, it's easier to do saltwater. But I would also think that like you start with RO typically for saltwater, so why couldn't you do the same with fresh? It's my thoughts. I don't know. It just might be they're not popular. There's not even like an African cichlid centered store, because you'd think that would happen if you had extremely hard water. That's crazy. Yeah, RO system for the win. Hey man, if you want to be able to tailor your water to whatever the heck you want, RO is your friend. Aquarium Fun. My daughter mentioned that they recently increased security on light rail. You can call ahead if someone does something, like pee on the floor, and they'll remove that at the next stop. That's good to know. I'm still probably almost never taking light rail. I've been on it like twice. Both my experiences were questionable. Mike, I live in Utah as well. I use katapa and jackfruit leaves to naturally control the pH. That's pretty sweet. That's smart. It's very, very smart. Very, very smart. All right. Let me see here. There were a couple other things earlier. At any point, guys, if you have questions, at Bentley Pasco makes it super easy for me to see. Happy to go into Q&A mode at this point. Oh, the other like funniest thing, Leo, I see your question. I'll get to it in a second. The other funny thing was at the end of Gary's talk, they always have a microphone that we pass around to ask questions so that it gets caught in the video, and then when the video playback has the questions as well. They try not to take too many. I think like there really is only like I think 5 questions that were taken, because there's really that many. Like most of the talks are so informative that there's not a lot of question makers. But one of the people was Dean, and so they're walking over. They hand the mic to Dean, and Gary immediately goes, "Ah, no," because he knows Dean fairly well at this point, and knows that like, oh, if a question's coming from Dean, it's probably going to be very specific or very like deep. And usually it's like because Dean has also wild collected, but in Peru as opposed to in West Papua, like Gary has. It's very specific to make it sure it's West Papua, not Papua New Guinea. That's the side that basically nobody goes collecting on because of reasons and tribal violence and things like that. But it was just, I thought it was funny because it goes to Gary and immediately Gary's like, oh no, because Dean's gonna ask a question. It's not gonna be something simple to answer. All right, Leo, what's the prettiest rainbow? The one you own. Honestly, seriously, because rainbows come in practically every color, they have lots of different patterns. Um, I just, I think it's hard to say like what's the prettiest and be objective. It's so subjective. Because if you prefer reds and oranges, you're not going to be interested in things like the turquoise rainbow or the Herbert Axelrodi or even potentially like Bozemanite because they might have too much blue and not red enough, or they might be too orange and not red. Um, you might not want you might want a fish that has some kind of specific patterning, right? Because there are some of the rainbows that have more interesting patterns to them, like the Frederick eye has that kind of pork choppy looking splotch, very similar to like a pork chop rasbora. The maculosus has that line of spot pattern that goes from about halfway down their body to their tail. Um, there are several ones that have more striped patterns to them. There are ones that are big, solid colors for the most part. So it's one of those things where it depends so much on what is your jam as a fish keeper that will then inform you as to what you find to be the prettiest rainbow. For me, there's like the rainbow I love the most for behavior, which happens to be very pretty. There's the rainbow that got me into rainbows itself, which happens to be very pretty. And then there's like the rainbow right now that I want the most, which happens to be very pretty. What a coincidence. Rainbows are pretty. Um, oh, hey, Ryan, since you're here, Mr. Hoon Aquatics himself, uh, the the most recent species that you picked up eggs for, I think it's Gelathrina tulsi. Can you spell it out for me? Because I'm being an idiot and not remembering correctly. And I don't want to like go bust into our like auction results and figure that out. But the one you got eggs for that's from the most recent, uh, Calitusa, thank you. 24 hatched so far. Yes. I'm looking forward to getting fish from you at some point. I like that fish a lot. Let me see if I can, now that I have the proper name and not being an idiot, if I can find a picture for you guys. That's Kalitawa. Everything's going to be Kalitawa, isn't it? Of course it is. Wait, we might have one. We might have one. From Jason Liang, no less. He made a magnet of this. Here, let me see if I can do this right. Well, fix my... Can I get... There we go. I'll put this up for a half second. Make sure that's right. Look at that bad boy. Granted, this is a magnet made to look like it, but this is basically what that fish looks like. It's so pretty. Has this really strong black band, and they've found, I guess, two different ones. One has an even thicker band than the Tusa does, but I really like this fish a lot. It's pretty new to the hobby because it comes from Gary's most recent trip. But yeah, Hoon Aquatics has some now, and I'll be literally like the first potential customer for you, Ryan. I'm just letting you know that. Whenever you're breeding and getting fry, or you hatch 5 bajillion of them and you don't want to raise that many, I will be happy to be first in line as your customer. Just letting you know. because I really like that fish, and I want to keep several of them. They're a West Papuan fish. Coffee. So you have it the entire island of Papua, right? The bird's head. There's the bird's head out here. It looks like a big brush turkey, but you have the west, and then you have Papua New Guinea's over here, the east, and it's out. This was caught out near the Wapoga area. So similarly, they went back and caught some Chilathrina alleni Wapogas, although these ones have a little more red in them than the previous captures did. But yeah, that's the Calitusa. Cali being stream. That's the most direct. But yeah. Cali Awalim. You know who does have those, Mickey? Moonlight Aquatics, which is a store that's local here, but they sell online. They regularly have the Cali Awalim in and for sale. So if you're looking for some, that's a good place to go find them. I can even give you their website real fast. I'll put it in chat. But that is... No, I'm not trying to look on Facebook. We have some big stuff. Like Meta's big event. It's called Connect every year. That they launch like new products and talk about big updates. That starts like tomorrow night. And so that's why like part of me been working my brains out. Like I literally found a bug 20 minutes before I was supposed to leave. And the way that it was required to document it took me like half an hour. And then I could pack up all my stuff and start leaving, so I left late. Oh, the worst. Moonlight Aquatics. That's the one. I just want his website. But my man Chang owns this store. He's really great. Boom. MoonlightAquatics.com. Really simple, but I'll put it in chat. He regularly gets in quite a number of rainbow fish. Very similar to Dan's fish. I'm pretty sure Dan brings in the Awalums every once in a while too. So you've got a couple of options. If you want the probably most dead solid best shipper in the game, you would go with Dan. If you want maybe a little bit better pricing, not to be bashing on Dan, but you know, Dan, you pay for a certain amount of quality with Dan, right? Moonlight's a little smaller operation the way they do things. They can bring some of their pricing down, but anytime you're shipping fish, it's always expensive. Let's be honest here. We all know this, right? We've been in this hobby long enough. Shipping fish ain't cheap. It sucks. I'll do my best to get the Tusa out there. I hope so, man. Yeah, dude, brother, keep in touch. I mean, I'm sure we'll cross paths sooner rather than later. I'm trying to go to more meetings for Le Club, things like that. Especially as we get into the not so pretty weather. It's always fun to go to a club meeting when the weather sucks. But yeah, that is a good little store. Moonlight Aquatics pretty cool. Dude started out of his garage. Dan is so expensive. I know, but here's the thing. And there is a certain amount of bias because I love Dan to death. But no place is quarantining and taking the level of care in their facility that Dan is. They have an on-site vet so that when issues occur, if they don't go through quarantine well, they literally have medical staff to figure out what the problem is. And if they can't figure it out with their on-site medical staff, they will send things to a high-tier lab. So by doing all these things, inherently the cost goes up, right? I want to find some reasonably priced horseman's quarries. So Corridorus Equus. Let me tell you this. I own some Equus currently. And I had a slightly larger group. I've lost a few of them, but man. They are so out in the open. They swim mid-water a ton. There is something so special about the Equus when you have them and get to enjoy them. They are something else. I like Dan's fish, however, I'm not ordering the $8 neon tetras. I will say this, like, you want to see the healthiest neon tetras you're ever going to see, they're probably coming from Dan. I only know, like, one other place where I would go, those are literally the healthiest neons I've ever seen in my life, and that's Redfish Bluefish, my buddy Jason, who's here in Seattle. when he brings them in. But again, I totally understand like a fish that we perceive to be like a $2 or $3 fish, and all of a sudden it's $8. You're like, I might take the risk and lose some rather than pay that price. But it's all personal taste, right? Everybody has their thing. There's a lot of people who just don't have a local fish store. And so inherently, when you're making that risk of shipping fish, you might want to, and this is a method that I tend to take when I'm shipping in fish. I'm happy to pay for the higher level of quality to minimize the risk of loss. And then usually I know, like in the case of dance fish, if I lose fish when I get them, it's me. I'm the dummy, right? But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where we eternally always say you get what you pay for, or this, or there's so many adages around it. But it's one of those decisions we all have to make, right? Not everybody is like able to afford really expensive fish orders, right? It's just one of those things. Like, I don't buy fish very often. I try to keep fish for a really long time so that when I do buy fish, I don't care if it's costing me like $200 because I plan on having them for as long as possible. And I'm not buying fish every month at $200 a shot, right? I'm buying fish like once a year. I I at my point in my hobby, I buy them so infrequently that I look for either kind of rare stuff that's in my niche, or I'm trying to get the best quality I can possibly get. And that's my personal taste, right? You got a lot of people who are kind of constantly putting up tanks. Leo, you're kind of my, I love you to death, brother, but you're my example. For a while, I felt like every other day you had a new tank. And it was like, I don't know that you could take the mentality I would take buying fish when you're putting up that many tanks and picking up that many fish and doing things like that, right? You kind of have to have a mixture of things where certain stuff you want to be absolutely dead on certain that you're getting the best you can. And then other things you might be like, I'm going to quarantine it for a while. It's okay. I'll cheap out a little bit here. Get it from the questionable local fish store. I need to get another new tank. Oh, man. And yeah, that's another thing. Like, rainbows take up, because I'm into a very specific fish that takes up a lot more space, and they live quite a long while, I tend to care a little less. Dan is impeccable standards for sure. That's why a lot of local shops are gone. They were not tenacious about quarantine. Yeah, I mean, it's just part of the industry is there's like a very turn and burn mentality. And Dan's like flipping that on its head. And it has a cost associated with it. But I respect what he's doing because he's following his mission. Very much so. In the sense of, let's minimize the number of hops the fish have to take, try to emphasize the fish's health, and customer satisfaction in the end, right? It's one of those things. It's one of those things. I'll give the guy some love. But yeah, all right. Any other questions we want? Mike, I think you should be able to charge a premium, especially for well-quarantined fish, proven that fish breed or the fish normally imported that breed. That's another thing. There are some questionable actors in the hobby. This happened back in like the late 80s, early 90s, where one of the only distributors that was getting a certain fish was sterilizing them, or would never ship females. Like we see this a lot with Batis, right? Where the Scarlet Batis, you like never see females of the fish because the breeders are not the breeders, but the distributors are trying to keep them on lock so that their own breeding facilities can keep those fish so they like become relied upon for them. Glowfish is a little different because they're genetic alteration patents and things like that. Because glowfish can, in theory, breed true in your tank. But yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's a little weird. That's a little different, I would argue. Regina, I once bought from PetSmart neons. Half of them passed away in the bag. I live 8 minutes away. I mean, I'd have turned right back around and brought them the whole bag and got a refund for the whole thing. because yeah. I picked up a group of really small 60-day-old Wapoga Chalatherina Alenais back in April. Talk about slow growers. They eat like pigs, and they're only about a third larger. So, Alenai, Bozemanii are two of the slowest. Do you know who's the absolute worst when it comes to growth? Chalatherina axelrodi. They grow so slow that they make Bozemanii look like fast growers. There's a reason why the few people that have been trying to breed them, when they finally have fry available, they're selling them for like $50 a fish before shipping. Because they take forever to grow out and color up. They're just a nightmare of a slow grower. But that's rainbows. I think rainbows come in like kind of four life stages as a if you're a rainbow fish breeder. There's right when they hatch, they look like little pencil streaks. They barely even look like fish. They definitely don't look like rainbows. And after about a month, your little fry actually kind of have like vague rainbow fish body shape to them. Right? And that's a special point. Then you get to like 3 to 4 months, and they've kind of got some size on them, and they're really darting around fast and starting to act like rainbows, but they look like a silver minnow. And then the magic starts to happen. Somewhere between 6 and 9 months, depends on the fish. The first little flecks of color start showing up. And you'll see like 1 or 2 boys get some color. You might have like 1 runner, something like that. And then and then all of a sudden, within like another month, all of them have colored up. And it's like magic. Because you went from this silver minnow, this thing that didn't even look like a rainbow fish, just like a pencil streak zipping around. Then it kind of started to look like a teeny, teeny, tiny little rainbow. And then it got to like, about a 1-inch fish, but it's a silver minnow. And you're kind of like, all right, we got that far at least. They're more stable now. Then a little flecks of color, and like within a month, all of a sudden, they color up. It's like magic. It is one of the things when I was able to breed rainbow fish, that period of time felt so special. Because you'd see that like the first boy or two get this like tiny, tiny little bits of color and be like, oh, these next few weeks are going to be great. Colors going to start showing up everywhere. And then all of a sudden, boom. Everybody looks like a miniature adult rainbow fish. They've been spawning for like a month and a half before that, but there's too many fish in there and they're eating all the eggs, right? They spawn before they ever color up. That's the crazy part about rainbow fish. If you really wanted to, at like 5 to 6 months before they've ever colored up, you could get your baby rainbows to spawn and give you more rainbows. It's wild. But that little window of time, when the first specks of color show up to colored up all the way, compared to everything else, it all of a sudden just like happens kind of fast. It's slow compared to like every other fish known to man, right? But it's like one of those things where you're just like, it's gonna be such a good day. Gonna be such a good day. I love it. It's the magic of rainbows for me. You got the group for $20. That's a deal. That's a deal. Knight Rider, what are we gonna do about City McGill Kanye? We gotta bring him back. I'm not familiar with that one. In the blue eyes, so all the City McGills, they're blue eyes, not rainbow fish. Gary's very, very particular about that. I just kind of nod and smile. I don't care as much. Popondetta Blue Eyes, its other nickname. Let me look at this bad boy. What's this thing look like? It's not super colorful. It looks like a gudgeon. Here. Let's make sure we're still looking in the right window. Okay, good. Here, I'll show you guys. Boom. This guy, look at this thing. Looks kind of like a gudgeon. It's like part gudgeon, part rainbow fish. I guess the question is whether or not they're still in the wild. The thing is, when things aren't super colorful, it's harder to introduce them throughout the hobby, except for like the really extreme super fans of those fish. So like Wim Heemskirk, as an example, is like the biggest name in pseudomagills in the world. He knows more than probably any person out there. That guy probably has them, but I don't know how many other people would, right? Now, Regina, I want to clarify though. I've bought other fish from PetSmart that I've lived for years. Panacore's lived 5 years, so I'm not hating on PetSmart. I think it depends. Each PetSmart's a little different. It just depends on how like passionate about aquatics the aquatics person is at a PetSmart. But because they're in these like uniform corporate systems, they have some inherent risks and flaws that can amplify the level of disease. Plus, they're getting them from the cheapest distributors possible, so that also increases those risks. And it just it's the problem with big corporate in the grand scheme of things when it comes into the fish industry, because they're doing it for like what's the cheapest bottom line we can do, and then we want to push throughput as opposed to necessarily the best health, things like that. Things like that. Leo, don't get me wrong, I love the quality of Dan's fish, but the prices are insane. I mean, yeah. But I've had issues with fish from him twice, but never an issue health wise with the wet spot and better prices. I've had issues with the wet spot. So yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's just a matter of if you find a place that you love, they give you the right combination of price, health, etc. for you, and selection that matters too. Especially somebody like you, Leo, as an example, who's got a pretty like wide and diverse interest in fish. So you're looking for some kind of crazy stuff every once in a while with your puffers or some of your special plecos, and then other times you're like looking for more bread and butter stuff that goes with those fish, or just in a completely different tank. I think that's a matter of like just figuring out what fits your vibe, right? Speaking of Vibes Aquatics. What's up, bud? Good to see you, Vibes. Make glass catfish popular again. I still see them regularly at a shop in Kirkland that used to be the shop I went to as a kid called Denny's Pet World. They almost always have glass cats in. And they look great in groups because they school so tightly. Yeah, and I think that's a perfect way to put it, Leo. It goes to show that everyone can have issues. Not one vendor is perfect, and that's correct. No vendor is ever going to be perfect. Like as an example, my local fish store, Aquarium Co-op, right? Phenomenal customer service, has a quarantine policy, but you're still inevitably going to run into a problem. It's going to happen. It's just how it is. The question then becomes, how does that shop treat you when a problem happens? And that's where someone like Co-op is amazing, because their customer service is second to none, right? They just take care of people. Uh, and there's a few other places that do similar. It's just one of those things, right? I want to shout out about recent videos and helping people with plants and fish problems are outstanding. Thank you, man. It's just I like doing it. I'm actually trying to do some changes. So basically, like, my wife is going to help me edit certain videos so that I'm not editing every video between my two channels, right? And I can keep up with the amount of content I put out currently, doing both channels, because like the whiskey stuff is actually fairly fast for me to edit compared to fish stuff. Fish type tends to take a little more work. Um, but she's going to help me by doing Aquarium 911 videos, because she understands like they're meant to be very basic and straightforward. They're informational videos, and we're splicing in pictures that we're receiving from people if they ever submit a video. But a lot of it is just talking about information, showing what's going on, right? It's pretty straightforward in the editing. And she used to do video editing when she was in college, and she's been doing stuff for her own gaming channel that she's editing a bunch of videos to get them all prepped, to get them all lined up and stuff like that, and kind of do this big launch, if you will. So one of the things that we talked about recently, mostly because I've been working too freaking much, is her helping me so that one of the goals is we want to get it to where we can get 2 Aquarium 911s or an Aquarium 911 and some other video per week without losing a live stream or quality. So that's a new goal we're working on. It's like we're literally trying to figure out how we schedule everything in our life to make sure that, like, because I'm doing some stuff with her for her gaming channel, and then I have stuff for Fish, right? All this kind of stuff. So we've been talking and like literally making these like schedules out for ourselves, where it's like, okay, while she's doing X on Saturday, as an example, Bentley's down to the fish room filming fish videos. You know, like all this crazy stuff. But yeah, the goal is to give you guys, basically, as we get into fall, an extra video a week. So yeah, we'll see how well we can keep up. Because inevitably, you know, life happens. Life loves to kick you when you're down. All right. A couple more questions, and we'll be done for the night. Leo, would you ever get into Lake Tang fish? I've kept Lake Tanganyika fish. But do you know which kind? Do you know which Lake Tang fish I kept? I've talked about keeping them again whenever I can do my garage. But a different species than the one I used to keep. Come on. Do you know? Do you? They're one of the most popular Lake Tanganyikan fish. No, I don't keep any now. I will in the future. Shellies is the answer for folks who are curious. I like shell-dwelling cichlids because of their behavior. I love shellies. I specifically want to keep... There's one specific species of shelly I want to keep. It's not the multifasciatus. I've kept them before. I had a big colony before. I sold a number of them, used to breed them quite a lot. They're really, really fun. My wife has even said that she misses them from when we were dating. But right now, no, I don't keep any. And part of that is just because it's easier for me to keep all of the tanks, effectively speaking, rainbow fish tanks, except the one guppy tank. Well, it'll be 2 guppy tanks, but one. No, not golds. Not golds. No. These guys, hold on. One second, I'll bring him up. Boom. Oh, make the picture bigger, not the freaking article. Come on! Don't burn out. There's no such thing. No such thing. Boop. The pearl shelly. This is the shelly when I keep shellies again, will be the shell dweller I keep. The pearl. I love the pattern that they have and those little like iridescent, basically pearl splotch patterns that show up throughout their entire body. I just think this is a fantastically beautiful fish. And yes, you can keep shellies and rock dwellers together, but part of the way that I want to do shellies would kind of negate the ability to do rock dwellers. Because otherwise, probably the most likely thing I would do would be shellies with sips, Cyprochromis, the sardine cichlid, as is sometimes called, because they're a really good rock dweller, they're a mouth brooder, but then I have to strip them and do all that kind of stuff, and then, and really what I want to do is I want a minimal rock structure, so that I can basically build like this little island in the middle of the tank that has plants growing out of the tank. I want immersed plants coming out of my African cichlid tank because then that helps pull in atmospheric CO2. It makes it easier for them to handle the higher pH and mineral content. That's what I want to do. Yeah, you can do larger. You need like larger tanks for that to make it kind of ecosystem. And I have a friend who has a tank like that. I have this big like corner 90 gallon that has shell dwellers and sips in it. It's actually a pretty sweet tank. Garage gills, I'm going to try multis with gelitochromis. I've seen multis with, and wait for this one. You ready? I put a video of this out past. I've seen multis with guppies. You heard that right. Multifasciatus shell dwellers with guppies. A member of my club, you can go back when I did a video of the home show like way long ago. Let me see if I can find it real fast. Boop, 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 boop. Go to my channel. See if it finds up. Aha! It's from 6 years ago. This thing. But in here, there's the house that has the really cool, like literally the thumbnail is the GSAS cookie. They have those really cool like fish-shaped cookies. The husband of the couple had this tiny tank that had a little group of multis with a bunch of guppies in it. And that tank actually survived for a surprisingly long amount of time with them living happily together. So crazy. Because I would assume the guppies are kind of dumb. They come in the Shelleys would go to war. Because like the way Shelleys act, it's like, we have our territory, you come in our zone, we will F you up. But as long as you stay out of our zone, you're cool. We will play nice, but we're protecting our zone. It's a crazy, like basically the guppies learned like, don't go to the bottom. He also had plants in this tank with the Shelleys. And the Shelleys were breeding. There were babies in there. So wild. So wild. It's one of those things where I saw it and I'm like, this can't possibly work long term. It's like, oh, this tank's been going for like 2 years. Huh? What the Yeah, the idea of guppies learning anything. It is kind of one of those things where you're like, you sir are lying. There is no way that guppies can learn. Rainbows might be dumb. Guppies have no memory, period. Oh, it's so wild. Mario, speaking of crazy combos, have you ever seen a betta work with a pistos? That is a combo in my head that I would go, there's no way that could possibly work. But I'm guessing you've got that in one of your tanks, Mario, because that sounds wild. I'd be curious what kind of betta and what kind of a pistos. Because are we talking like some of the smaller pistos? Why am I forgetting their name right now? They're like the blue opal is the color variant. You know what I'm talking about, Chad. I'm just being dumb. Borelli. Thank you, Mickey. Borellis. I like Borellis are probably my favorite of all the Epistos. That's not true. Elizabethae, but that's just because their breeding dress and fins look so sick. But if I was going to keep them more regularly, Borelli would probably be the one I'd keep. I just like the way they look a lot. Plus, they're a little more chill. It's kind of like Bolivian rams. They're like not as crazy cool as the German blue ram. They're way more chill and way easier to take care of. Viejas? Or is that... that is Vieja, right? Because there's Vieja and there's something else. But I've seen an Episto nerd who had Viejas. They were really pretty. Mario, no I don't. It was a crazy thought that came to my head today. Oh. I mean, you could make it work with enough protective zones, like, especially if the pistos stay low and the betta stays high. It's possible. You just gotta worry about jumping. So ideal Lake Tang would be a 75 gallon minimum. It depends on what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to mix like shell dwellers and a rock dweller, you actually want some height in the tank. So you might be better off with like a 90 gallon because you need that extra height that the 75 doesn't have. Because the shell dwellers will stay in a certain range down low. especially if you have rock dwellers that are kind of taking up the top. But if you're trying to do more mid-water fish, then a 75 should be fine, and you're not worried about shell dwellers. It depends on how you're trying to mix things together. Bait and Shy are really cool. I don't know the Ortegae, and I've seen Trifasciatas. They're very cool. But yeah, betas are smart. Oh yes, betas are very, very smart. They're a lot like cichlids in the sense that they're fairly smart for fish. I've seen ones that are like crazy trained. They can do all sorts of like little tricks and fun stuff, and they're like really, really active, and they get lots of interaction from their owners. And those are probably the most spoiled betas known to man. Because they get all the interaction they really, really desire. Because they are very smart fish. Uh-oh. Leo, explain to me why I can't keep any Episto to breed, but can breed Pelvicochromis. My short answer is this. Pelvicochromis are easier. Just in general. They're a little more hardy. They're a little easier. They need less enticement. Usually what I found for making Epistos more likely to breed, and this is what I found means what I have learned from people who are very good at Epistos, because I am not. So people like Master Breeder Dean, is it really matters the amount of micro foods in your tank. So if you're, Leo, I'm pretty confident you're doing this kind of stuff, but if you're feeding like lots of live baby brine and things like this to where the fish kind of instinctually know there is lots of food available right now, they are more likely to spawn. Whereas you don't necessarily have to do anything like that when it comes to Pelvicochromis and cribs. They're just kind of like, all right, we got a spot. And then the female is like, I have a cave. You are a male. Get your ass in there. You are giving me children. And the males are like, all right, just please don't beat the hell out of me. I'll go. It's all right. I'm going. Right there, they are so simple. That's probably because the females are just like, that's part of why I love them so much. They do their little dance, and the males are just like big dopes. They're just like, okay. Just do whatever. Where it's the opposite with the pistos, right? Because the males are the ones that they got to color up, they got to go into breeding dress, they got to entice the female, and the female's just kind of like, nah. Not feeling it, bud. You better make that cave nicer. Try again next month. That's the difference, baby. Cribs, the ladies initiate. The ladies basically just tell the men, they just boss them around. Pistos, males try to initiate, and the women still boss them around. It's just like life. Oh man. I prefer species only like Tanganyika setup, so I get lots of babies. Yeah, I mean, I tend to I like things like the 40 breeder footprint, and those naturally do super well for things like shell dwellers. And when shell dwellers are happy, there will be many, many baby fish. Many fish. More than you can realistically keep in that tank. And then you can get like the little army of shell dwellers that do the thing where you come in the room and they're like, you just get this army of little tiny angry fish like, where's my food? Where's it at? Where's it at? And you're like, I'm getting it. Give me a second. Big scary hand comes over the top of the tank and they're like, shit, hide. And the food gets in there. They all slowly kind of peek out like, oh, it's food time. And maul it. It's hilarious. I love it. Mike just started keeping cribs last month. Already have my first brood. Attaboy. I love Pelvicochromis. They're the other African cichlid that I would keep. Granted, they're a like stream and river fish as opposed to like the rift lakes, but I love them. I love their behavior. I love the way the females color up. There's just a lot of things. The males are kind of just big idiots. It fits. I'm a big idiot, you know. I feel a kinship. I want this one, Teniatus wuri. I had Bipindes, and I loved them to death when I had them. Let me see if I can find this bad boy. You're not gonna be nice, huh? Fine, I'll spell the whole thing out. Right. Ooh. I can see why you like these. I can see why you like these. They have a much more pronounced gold face. Hold on. We'll put this up. Bam! It's like the males kind of all look similar, although there's a bit more interesting patterning in the tail and the male here. But if you look at the female, there's that big bright gold face. You don't have the big stripe like a lot of the other female Pelvicochromis have. You have these kind of nice little splotches, right? There's like little pink splotch and yellow splotch, and then of course there's big golden fins. That's pretty common in almost all the Pelvicochromis females when they're colored up. And then that like purplish blush that comes across the whole body. I see why you like them, man. That's a really really pretty color set. And it's different. The patterning is different than most of the common ones, because like usually, and you can kind of see in these other ones, like this Teniatus picture that's over here from Aquarium Glacier, right, where you've got that big bar down the middle, and then when they color up, it intensifies a lot more. That's more common in a lot of the Teniatus. So it's kind of cool to see this much different pattern set. Very cool fish. Very cool fish. Bam. All right, gang. Mike, how long will cribs keep themselves and the babies in the cave after the egg hatch? Just saw about 7 fry yesterday surrounding them. Usually they only keep the babies in there for like a week tops, and then they start moving around with a little cloud of babies following them around, and that's like super fun. I will say, if you don't want to risk the female deciding that the male is the enemy and beating the hell out of the male, it helps to have a really peaceful ditherfish. Pencilfish can do this pretty well, actually. I had scissortail rasboras in mine, and they were just like terrified as all get out whenever the female got pissed and started chasing them. But usually it would be like a quick zip, and they would just kind of threaten. They didn't actually really attack. I didn't make the fish go away, and then whatever spot they were in, they were just kind of like herd the rasboras on the opposite side of the tank from wherever they had the babies. And I did that in a 40 breeder, so yeah. Uh-oh, hold on. See this really long name that Hoot Aquatics put in chat? That scares me. Scares me. I can't pronounce that to save my soul. It's not true. Enigmatochromis. Lucanesi. Lucanesi? Is this right? Hold on, I gotta go over here. Why does neither of those look like a female? Images, help me. Help me. Help me! Okay, this looks more from the wet spot. We'll put this up. Boom! It's interesting because they're not as colorful as I would assume when you get into anything that's considered a crib. But that, like, blue stripe on the dorsal of the female is really cool. Especially with that little splotchy pattern for the black. The male looks like turbo boring. But that blue in the female and that, like, really faint kind of blush that's across the rest of the body on the female, it's really interesting, kind of striking color. I bet you see that fin, like, no matter where she is. Oh, man. Nice. Nice. All right, gang. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. We will see you next week. Working on, we've got another Aquarium 911 this Saturday, and then I'm trying to get a slightly different video next week. It might be another extra week before I can do the big Aquasky video, but I'm trying to work on. I've got a few like extra things I'm playing with just to make sure. But that's coming soon. That'll be the review, and then we'll have an ultimate guide that'll come out relatively soon after that. The good news is, because it's so similar to the original Aquasky, the ultimate guide is kind of similar. There's just a few extra benefits from the new light that you can use, and that will matter. So it might not be like 4 different videos. It might only be like 1 or 2. We'll see. We'll see how I split it up, because I don't want to make it like too crazy long. But guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome. Have a good rest of your week. Keep cool out there if you're still in the hot weather, because it was toasty here today.